Okay guys, today we are going to make meatloaf. And I use my mother-in-law's recipe, as close as I can remember. It's been a long time, but I've been making it the same way for the last 10 or so years. And the ingredients you're going to need is you need 1 pound hamburger. I always use the leanest I can find. I don't need all that extra fat, especially in this recipe, because I also am going to use a pound of ground pork. So it's going to be a 2-pound meatloaf. I've got my green pepper ready to go. I've got my Italian, use the Italian, adds a little bit of extra flavor. My Italian breadcrumbs. I've got an onion. I've already started. You can see I got this half peeled, so I'm going to use a half of an onion. I have a large onion or a whole small. So I'm going to use half because this is a really big onion. I got my ketchup, so ketchup is important. I don't care for ketchup in my or on my meatloaf. So when I do my meatloaf and I put it in the pan, that ketchup layer that goes on top, I only do that on half of it. However, the whole thing, I put ketchup actually in it. And then I'm going to use some trusty old garlic salt. And, of course, black pepper. For this recipe, I use the a ground pepper like this. A lot of times, different recipes, I'll use a heavier ground pepper. But for this one, it's going to be that light. And then I have my 3 eggs. I use 3. Most recipes call for 2. I like the consistency of 3. And these eggs are actually really small. I don't know what they're doing to the chickens these days, but I used to use get nice big eggs, but these are small. So I'm just gonna go to work. I did take out my meats this morning to defrost, but they're still a little bit frozen. And you're gonna get in there and really squish it around. So we're gonna put it right here in our bowl. So that's a pound of the ground pork. It's still a little frozen in the middle, and hopefully by the time I am ready to squish everything together, it will be thawed. And then use my knife as a cutting tool. Then I have a pound of hamburger that's going to go right into that bowl. And it's just, I'm just going to let it sit there in the room temp for a few minutes and break it up, and this will all be mushed together. And I like to add certain ingredients at a certain time, but I'm sure it doesn't matter when you add them. But the last thing I'll be adding is my eggs. And the reason I particularly do that is I want everything to be coated in the eggs. And if I add the eggs too early and mix it in, I feel like everything won't be coated properly. So I'm going to set this trash aside. I'll get to that in a minute. And when I dice up my onions, I just, let me smooth this back a little so maybe you can see. I just do thin slices. There are a lot of different ways to dice onions. I don't care too much if they're exactly the same size. But let's see if you can see here. At this point, I actually do go in at an angle so that you don't get any huge pieces. And just chop it up and get all these pieces nice and small. And of course, as you all know, when onions cook, they do cook down in size, so they're a little bit larger. It's okay. And we're just going to put that right on top of that meat. Just to get pieces like this, and I'll just break them up. I use the sweet onions. I'm already a crier, so I don't need anything to make me cry more. And I like the flavor of them better. So it's not as a potent flavor. If I'm doing a recipe that needs a potent onion flavor, then I actually use onion flakes. These right here. I use them because these pack a potent onion flavor. The meatloaf, obviously, it's not going to have that potent of an onion flavor. I know this is wasteful the way that I do this, but I just cut my pepper top off. I'll set that aside. And then I cut out the interior of my pepper, all these seeds and whatnot. I did hear, if you look at these bumps on the bottom, if there's, I think it's 4 is a female and 3 is a male. I don't know that to be true, and I want to know how to tell the difference between them. If you know, let me know. I'd love to hear that. But I have heard that. Somebody's told me that before in the past, that there are female and male peppers. So I did wash the outside of this already, but if you can see, I'm just trying to pull out all this stuff in the middle of them. Inside, you can see there's still seeds in there. So I'm going to go over and I'm just going to rinse it out real quick. Use cold water. Until it's clean inside. We're going to take the trash and set it off to the side. I use a lot of paper towels. I don't use hand towels. I have a little bit of a phobia about germs. So I don't use hand towels per se. I mean, I just use paper towels so that I can stay a little mentally sane. And again, you're going to take these and you're going to chop them the same way you did the onions. I don't really pay attention to size. I know they've got to be bite size or smaller, because when I take a bite of the meatloaf, I don't want to be overwhelmed with pepper. So I cut all this white, the white part of the pepper, I cut all of that off, because that part gets really mushy when it's cooked. And seeing that we're going to be cooking this at 375 for an hour, it's a lot of cook time for those peppers to become mushy. And so I get rid of all the whites so that I don't have any mushy part of a pepper in my meatloaf. I know that's, some people say that's wasteful, but that's the way that I do it. If you like the white parts, some people say they have a nice flavor to them. You can keep them. Another good thing to do is take them, if you're going to have a salad, you can chop those up really finely and put them in your salad to give that nice pepper flavor to your salad. So if you don't want to waste it, there are other things you can do with it. And that way you don't have that mushiness in your meatloaf. Now, with my meatloaf tonight, I'll be making mashed potatoes. I use the golden mashed potatoes because they're smoother. If I was going to do a baked, I'd use a russet because they're sturdier. But I'm doing mashed, so I'm going to use my golden potatoes for that. And then I have another little fork with a beef dish. I usually have corn with it. So I'm going to have broccoli myself, and then for Dwayne, I'll have corn. So I have, I'm going to show you here real quick, a pretty little mixture. You've got your meat and your pepper and your onions in there. I'm going to get rid of my trash, so let me put you on pause. So while I was gone, I transferred to a bigger bowl so that I have more room, because my hands are actually going to get in there. Make sure you take off all your rings and whatnot, because this you really want to mix up good, so you're going to use your hands. But before we do that, we're going to add a little bit of pepper, and I don't really measure my salt and pepper, so I just put a nice healthy layer on. My husband likes a lot of pepper. I like the flavor of pepper. So let me just show you real quick. You can see I got a nice healthy layer on there of pepper. There you go. And then a little bit of garlic salt. I use the garlic salt because I don't want to use I don't want to actually use garlic. Garlic's really good for you, but in a meatloaf, it can be overpowering to have those cloves of garlic in there. So I just add a little bit of garlic salt so we get that nice garlic flavor. And then I have my Italian breadcrumbs. I like this particular brand. They're small pieces. They have good flavor, nice consistency. I always brand new thing. And again, I'm not one for really measuring a lot, so I'll just pour a nice amount in. I'd probably say I put in probably about 3/4 of a cup. So there's the breadcrumbs in there, and the pepper and the salt is all in there. So now ketchup. You're going to use about, in the mix itself, you use about a 1/2 cup of ketchup. And then on top, you're going to probably need about another 1/4 cup. So I'm going to do the ketchup now. Here's my eggs. So I learned a trick. I'm not very good with these things because I cut myself all the time. But I don't have a good surface to crack an egg on. So hit the back of it with my knife. And it cracks it nicely. And I don't know if you noticed, I'm actually breaking the yolk. So see, I broke the yolk. I break the yolk as it goes down. That way it spreads across better. So when I go to mix it, it mixes in nicer. That yolk is really, the whites don't hold the meatloaf together, it's the yolks. And the yolks is where you're going to get all your nutrients from. The whites are full of protein, but all the fatty nutrients and omegas are in the yolk. So I used 3 small eggs. If I had, and I forgot to break that one. If I had large eggs, I would use 2 eggs. I got little baby eggs. So that is all I put in there. I'm going to mush it together. And you just get right in there. Oh, it's cold because the meat was still frozen. So I'm just gonna do lots of mushing. Get it all well mixed. You want to make sure your onions and your peppers are mixed well throughout. And ketchup, you saw me, I put it all over the entire thing so that it's mixed in. And now we're just making sure that the meats are mixed well together. You don't want to get a bite all pork or a bite all hamburger. You don't want to get all your onion in one bite. You just want to make sure everything's mixed perfectly. So now I'm going to take that and I'm going to transfer it to a well-greased pan. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to preheat my oven to 375 degrees. It's going to bake. So that's preheating while I'm transferring into my pan. So I have a standard meatloaf pan, and I actually like doing the little pans better because there's only 2 of us, but I don't have any of them anyways. So, and this does make 2 pounds, and this is a 2-pound pan, I believe. So I just literally, I'm going to squish it down in there. There's the meatloaf. Now I'm just going to put my ketchup on half of it and wait for it to go in the oven. So it is ready to go into the oven. The oven is heating up, and once it is ready to go in, I'll put it in, and I will cook it on 375 for approximately 1 hour, or until the top of that is nice and golden brown. Gonna make mashed potatoes, perfect mashed potatoes. Always start with the yellow. I use the Klondike Goldens, or any golden potato makes the perfect mashed potatoes. So we're gonna start. I have a paper towel down because as I peel, I keep the peels separated. They've been washed, and I'm ready to peel. Okay, so I have 4 medium potatoes, medium to small, and 2 itty bitty baby potatoes. So I'm going to cut those up in 2 small squares. So be right back. I got to do the trash thing. So the smaller you dice them, the less time it's going to take them to cook, but you lose flavor if they are too small because they turn into mush. So I do, they're about 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch cubes. So I add a little bit of salt. I put the salt in before the water, so the water will dissolve it as it goes in. And I use salt for flavor, and it also helps with the boiling. I'm going to put cold water, always cold water on top of your potatoes. These potatoes have been rinsed. And you make sure all potatoes are covered very, very well. And we're going to move that over to the stove. Now these will take about 20 minutes or so to cook. So you cook your potatoes until they're easily stabbed with a fork and there's not much retention. You want a little retention, but not a lot. Once you get it to that point, you're going to drain them, put them back in the pot with butter, salt, and pepper, and we're going to mash them. So I have the butter in there, a little bit of milk. Put some pepper in. Like a generous amount of pepper. I still have it in the pot and on the stove. I did turn the heat off. I use the Himalayan salt. I just like the flavor of it better. And then you're just going to mash it. And that consistency is exactly what you want when you're mashing. So let's mash away. And you want it to the consistency where when you mash down, it comes up and it looks creamy and it has this nice shape to it. That's what you're looking for. And when you're done, your potatoes are ready to serve. Okay guys, I'm about ready to make a homemade gravy. So I'm going to start, I'm going to go and grab all my ingredients. I need butter, and I need beef bouillon, browning flavor, water, and cornstarch. So let me gather all that stuff and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my saucepan here. I'm going to actually get things moving here. I'm going to put it on a very low heat. start by using just a little under a stick of butter. And then I have approximately half a cup, this cup, it's about a half a cup of cold water. It's important that that water is cold because if it's warm water, the cornstarch will coagulate and it'll get lumpy. Cold water always works best when you're doing a gravy base. And I don't do true measurements per se, I do old-fashioned measurements. So I'm going to use a good old-fashioned tablespoon. While the butter's melting, I'm just going to put a tablespoon in there, and I'm going to mix it really well so that the water will turn to a creamy white. I'm going to move it away from the heat and just give it a good mix. It will almost look like milk when you have the right consistency. Like probably 2% milk. A little more watery than whole milk, but this is going to be your gravy base, so it'll make it nice and thick. As you're cooking it, you can add a little bit more cornstarch to it if need be, but you shouldn't need to. Now, while that's sitting, you can set that off to the side because it's going to be one of the last things we're going to add. Can I open it? So what I have here is I use better than bouillon. Nice consistency. So this is going to give it its basic beef flavor. I'm going to use just a butter knife because you don't want too much. It's very salty. And I'm just going to put that in there to cook with that butter. And it is on a very low heat, so it's not going to burn. And I would say that's probably about half a teaspoon is what I use of that. While that's simmering, I'm going to add pepper. You notice I do put a lot of pepper. Pepper is a very good spice. It actually raises your metabolism. And then I'm going to, because this is going to be an onion-based brown gravy versus just a beef base. So I'm going to take, remember I was talking about these earlier, these nice chopped onions. It doesn't matter the brand, they're all the same. They just have a nice potent onion flavor. So I'm going to put just a few sprinkles of that in there. And this is going to be your best friend because this is going to keep everything mixed together nicely without it sticking. I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit so I can get this all nice and going melted butter. With all those nice yummy flavors in it. Now you notice I didn't put any salt in. You don't put salt in until the last step because you're going to use your salt for flavoring. And you don't want to put too much in the beginning because it'll lose all that other flavor. We have our potatoes over here ready. The meatloaf is in the oven, about ready to come out to sit. When you take your meatloaf out, let it rest for about 10 minutes before you cut into it. That way all those juices don't make it just fall apart. So while that's melting, I'm going to check on my meatloaf. Oh, it looks amazing. But it does have about 15 more minutes to cook. So I'm going to put my timer back on for another 15 minutes. You hear the sizzling because you hear the butter, and it's starting to bubble a little, which is exactly what we wanted. So I'm going to make sure this is on a lower heat. Remix my slurry. Remember, this is your base for your gravy. The more of this you add, the more gravy you're going to have, but remember, you need to be able to balance it out with all the flavors. So let me show you what it's just a white slurry. So that's what it looks like now, but we're going to add the browning seasoning. So this does have a little bit of spice in it, and not a lot though. So your flavor is going to come from your butter and your bouillon, your salt and your pepper and your seasonings. So this is just going to make sure that your brown gravy is nice and brown. Turn you around. So that's what it looks like now. This is the same slurry we just saw a minute ago, and we're going to take this entire cup and just dump it right in with that nice yumminess going on there. You keep this on a low to medium heat, constantly whisking. If you don't, then you'll get a burnt gravy, and you don't want that. So you can see that it's starting to thicken up a little bit, and it's got that nice brown gravy color. We're going to actually take it off the heat now. It's going to stay warm, and it will continue to thicken.